Well, as you know, nothing gets me going like talking tax early in the morning. Don't worry about that though today. But seeing as it's mid-year budget update time, I do want to dive into the broader economic picture because it's not going very well. Joining us live now is our Wednesday panel, Labor MP Julian Hill, Liberal MP Keith Wolahan. Good morning to you both. Now, just had the Treasurer on a moment ago, so I'll start with you, Keith, first this time. So the Treasurer is keen to talk up the billions of dollars in savings, but what does that mean for those who can't afford a lunch this Christmas?
Well, I think the Treasurer lives in a different reality. Like I'm sure Julian does, I've been visiting many schools in their graduations and parents are talking to each other and I talk to them, and the conversation about what they're going to do over the break usually ends like this. I think we'll stay at home. I don't think we'll do much this year because they're finding their budgets aren't stretching enough to have a holiday. So families have seen a collapse in living standards like we haven't seen in this country for decades. So for the Treasurer to talk up the economy and his work, I think is not reflecting the reality that families are feeling. And there's two numbers that count. We have seen an explosion in government spending, an explosion in public sector jobs, and I'm sure Julian will lead with a scare campaign on this, of 26,000, but we've also seen a collapse of business insolvencies of 26,000. Yeah. So for every public sector job, there's a business that has closed down. That's the reality that Australians are living in. Yeah,
worst on record. Now, Julian, over to you to respond to all of this. Now, I might point out that during the last election campaign, your central pledge was to help folks with the cost of living, but everyone, 95% of people have gone backwards. So how do you explain to your constituents that you've got the economy under control?
Well, I'll respond to what Keith said there, but I'd point out it's very short memory that Keith's got. He wasn't here last term and didn't see the mess that Abbott and Turnbull and Morrison made of the budget. 9 years, not a single surplus, and we inherited an inflation mess. When we came to government, inflation was nearly 7%, peaked soon after at 8%. It's back down around 3% and it's moderating. Wages are growing and the tax cuts are making a difference. But yeah, people are doing it tough, of course. That's the nature of inflation. It's a tax on ordinary people, and it's why it's been a central economic challenge. Let me just respond to Keith's point there, though. It's a cute little talking point, isn't it? 26,000 public service jobs. Well, I'll make 3 points. I'll tell you what, a significant number of those jobs are replacing labour hire workers that the former government had sitting around being paid more. So a lot of those jobs are actually saving the taxpayer money. It's about time they admitted that. We're not contracting work out to PwC and the Big Four anymore. Yeah, we've got public servants that are paid less than the Big Four doing that work. They also like to conjure up this stereotype. They're somehow sitting around in Canberra having coffee. Well, apart from the fact that's offensive to the people doing the work, most of those jobs are in the regions and cities. That's not a scare campaign, it's a fact. And yes, we've put on some more public servants in places like Veterans Affairs to deal with the shocking, shameful backlog of claims that we inherited. And guess what? You need people to do that work.
But
I might just some public servants in Centrelink.
I might just jump in there, Julian, because how is any of this helping people at this time of the year?
Well, the other point Keith made then was 26,000 insolvencies. And again, I'll just make a couple of points. The number of small businesses in Australia is at a record high. The ABS data released last week. You've got to look at both sides of the equation. There are no doubt, absolutely, because I talked to them, some small businesses doing it tough. I worked in a small business through uni. My mum did bookkeeping for a small business. I get it. I talk to people. But the ABS data showed there is a record number of small businesses in this country because the number of businesses in Australia is at a record high. It's grown by 3% over the last year. So some businesses disappear and some grow. And you never talk about both sides of the equation. You've got to look at both sides of the data.